Light on behalf of the Family Life Ministries Department of the church to welcome you this afternoon to this evening's program. And I must say I was looking forward to more individuals being here, but maybe they have slumbered and slept. But hopefully we have more individuals join us later on. We began this program a few weeks ago as we looked at the trauma-informed church, and the discussion was food for thought. And so as we continue this evening's program, we hope that whatsoever we said here, shared with you here, will assist you and inform you. Because the world is indeed a changing place. The church has gone past many of the things we are accustomed to. The church is more informed. And so we as members ought to be informed and, as the case is, adjust ourselves or thinking towards the people and the community to which we serve. So this afternoon we have a very resourceful panel, and it will be introduced to you in short order. But I want to welcome you, invite you to stand with me at this time as we pray. Let's bow our heads together. Loving Lord, we thank you for your church, for the work of the church, for the mission in which we are engaged. Furnish us, Lord, we pray, with the wisdom and the knowledge that we need, not just to move your work forward, but to tend to the sheep and to tend to others we come in contact with as we seek to make disciples for you. Thank you for the panel assembled this afternoon, and we pray that whatsoever is said and done will not just be to your name's honor and glory, but will bring us information so that we can be better individuals as we give service to the Master. Thank you for hearing us this evening, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Turn you over now to Sister Ambrose. No, give me the
Ambrose, Felix, whatever you want
Sister
to call
Felix
me.
as she leads out in this afternoon's program.
Good afternoon, everyone. That sounds like a great good afternoon. That means you guys are ready. I want to thank Pastor Rose for such a wonderful introduction. We are so excited to be here again with you to continue the conversation that we had about 2 weeks ago on the trauma-informed church and how we can support individuals who are experiencing trauma. I'm looking to see if we got a PowerPoint up on the board here, the screen. Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, so if you would like to follow along with us on your phones, we have a QR code that should be coming up on the next slide. All you have to do is get your cameras out on your smartphones, and it should take you to the link where this presentation is. We're going to wait for the QR code to get up. If anything that I just said sounds very foreign to you, just like last time, you're going to find the closest millennial or Gen X. Am I seeing it? All the Gen X and the millennials are on this side. And you're going to ask them to help you out here. But I see a few phones out. All right. Okay, so in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we're going to move along to the next slide, a recap on what is trauma. Just a reminder, trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that someone experiences as either physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening. That can be abuse, that can be loss, that can be a myriad of things, but what's important about this definition is that it's what somebody experiences as either physically or emotionally harmful. This can have a lasting negative impact on the person's mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. And so we're going to be focused today, like we mentioned before, on how do we support individuals who are experiencing that, practical ways, religious barriers to helping people with trauma. And I have a very experienced team of individuals to help me today with this discussion. Right next to me, we have Dr. Klima Lewis, who is the Executive Director of the Women's Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us. Give her a round of applause, please. Right next to her, we have Dr. Arlene Smith-Christopher, who is a pediatrician and the Vice President of Youth Arise. Please give her a round of applause. Next to her, we have Miss Joan Castor Willock. I hope I said that right. Castor Willock, all right. She is a former youth counselor and therapist who has worked with Virgin Islands Behavioral Services and other local groups. Please give her a round of applause. And last but very not least, we have Mr. Rudell James, who is a guidance counselor with the Virgin Islands Department of Education. Please give him a round of applause. Very, very, very cool crew, very smart, very insightful, and so I'm looking forward to doing this with them. All right, so with that said, let's get right into it. The first question on the board, we're gonna skip a few slides. Skip, all right, yes. So number one on the board after this slide is if someone never opened their mouth to speak, what would be some telltale signs that they are suffering from trauma related to abuse or anything else, any type of trauma? I know this is, we're talking about End It Now and domestic violence and so forth, but we did discuss that trauma could be resulting from anything that somebody experiences as harmful. So if somebody is experiencing trauma, what are some telltale signs if they never open their mouth that they're experiencing trauma? And before I open it up to the panel, I want to hear what you guys are thinking. If somebody can help me with carrying around a mic, that would be helpful. What are some telltale signs that somebody is experiencing trauma? You see them here in church, they're not saying anything, but there's some actions that are going on that make you feel like, maybe something is going on there. I see Brother Christopher has his hand up.
Just the fact that the person is so quiet and introvert, they're not saying nothing, it's a sign alone that something is going on deep within.
Okay, so being silent and introverted. Could that just be a personality thing? Is there anything beyond that? I agree with that, but some people are naturally silent, correct? Some people are naturally sort of quiet, but anything beyond that that could tell us that something might be going on?
Separation from friends. They used to have friends, but all of a sudden they don't.
They're
have friends anymore.
isolating themselves?
Yeah, isolation.
Okay.
Also bruises.
Okay, so being more quiet than usual, isolating themselves from people they used to have relationships with, physical bruises, physical signs. We see you.
Or they, I was saying, distance themselves from people, or they just
We can't hear you very well.
Sorry. No, I was going to say they distance themselves, or they have like a like if you come towards them, they have like a reaction towards.
So flinching.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might distance themselves, and if you do something that is too quick, they may flinch, okay? I see some nods, all right. Okay, so with that said, thank you for your participation. I want to open it up and give Dr. Klima the opportunity to respond.
So good afternoon. Let me just say, you can't always look at a person and tell they're a victim. Just like you can't always look at a person and tell they're an abuser, because it's masked and it's hard. Unless you know the person and been around the person, or they say something, or you notice some unusual behavior, then you know they are suffering from some form of trauma. Some victims will say something, but not many, because they're ashamed and they're embarrassed and they don't want people to know what's going on, especially in the church. They don't want you to look at them different, and they don't want you to look at the abuser different. So they're not just gonna be out there saying, look at me, I'm a victim. It doesn't work like that. So some good examples was, if you notice the difference, maybe they were friendly and they're not friendly anymore. They distance themselves. You invite them over, they're isolated. They can't come to any of the church meetings. They can't come to any of the events because the partner won't let them come unless they're present. That's something you can notice, that they're isolating. And how are they dressing? Are they covering up a lot? Are they wearing like sweaters and a lot of makeup? And head stuff so you can't see the bruises. Because most victims, you're not going to see their bruises. They don't want you to see their bruises. If they got a black eye, they're going to wear big black glasses. If they got anything on their body, they're going to cover it up because they don't want you to see it. So you're not going to see the bruises that easy. And the problem with psychological trauma is that you can't see it because that's something that's happening within them. So if they don't open up or trust you, maybe somebody said something that brought it out. I've seen victims just by some of the songs, like a good example, you heard the song, Break Every Chain? That's a real emotional chain. If you're a victim, that would get you very emotional. So that's another way to look at it. The songs could bring out the emotions. Try to, just notice anything different. It's really hard. And it's different based on age, believe it or not, based on sex, based on your orientation, based on what kind of support you got. So we can't put everybody in the box and say this is how people look that's suffering from trauma. But the only way you're going to know is get closer, be a friend, be a good church member, pay attention, open the doors. You notice anything unusual. And if they feel they can trust you, they'll eventually talk to you. So when you get programs like this, I have brochures in the back. They might pick up the brochure. They might ask you some questions. And you might just know, let's be honest, some of us live around each other. Some of us know the dynamics of what's taking place in the houses, and some of us don't. But if you are a supportive member of your church, you'll reach out and not worry about the partner or what might happen after the fact. You just got to let them know you care. You are very rarely will get a trauma victim that's going to go open up and tell you what's going on. Now, once they pass it and they still working on it, so those are the victims that I have in support groups. They might come here and talk now because they're not afraid anymore, and they're working on it, and they found safety. But those that still in the trauma, they're not going to open up and let you know in the trauma. So I think that's important for people to understand. And then I think somebody mentioned there's other things, trembling, quiet, maybe extremely loud, fearful, maybe angry all the time. You look for different signs in a person. So if we all in the church and I'm one way all the time and all of a sudden I change my behavior, something is going on. It might not be the trauma. It might be something else. But something is going on. And that's the best way you can tell when you see a difference in somebody's behavior.
Thank you so much for that. And what really stood out for me from your response is that we need more opportunities to build relationships with people in the church, because you're not going to be able to see unless you have already had that relationship with the person. Right. And it's so easy to get caught in, you come to church, you get dressed up, you sit down, you enjoy the singing, you enjoy the sermon, and then you leave. I mean, I'm guilty of that too, because we all have things going on at home that we want to hurry to get back to. We want to hurry to get back to lunch, want to hurry to get some sleep in, but we need opportunities to get to know each other on an intimate level so that when these minute differences are starting to occur, we'll be able to tell. Would anybody else like to chime in on anything here before we move on from the panel? All right. All right, so moving on to number 2. Number 2 on the next slide. What are some of the most common religious barriers that prevent people from seeking professional help for trauma? What are some of the most common religious barriers or spiritual-based barriers that prevent people from seeking professional help for trauma? All right. I want to open this up to the audience before we come back to the panel. Any thoughts? What are some things that we do within the church that prevent people from seeking help? I see your hand.
They might feel that we are very judgmental sometimes.
Showing judgment, that's a good one.
Or they're in a relationship that maybe we may not approve of, but they're being abused. So they wouldn't want to come out and talk about it.
Gotcha. So I'm with a non-Adventist, I'm with a non-Christian. Everybody already told me I should have chosen better, right? So how do I come back and say, okay, you know, maybe you were right, things are not going as well as I thought it should. Something like that? Yeah, I get it. So now I'm focused on being judged instead of getting help. Anybody else? What are some other things that we do in the church or things we promote that may prevent people who are experiencing trauma from seeking help? All right, Sister Ambrose.
Because we believe in no divorce, or we promote God hates divorce, we don't want to get involved in family business where it looks like we are taking sides or telling the person that's abused you need to leave. And also we might not believe, let's say it's an elder or somebody, oh, the elder wouldn't do that. So we tend to pick sides anyway and believe the one that looks more spiritual.
And that reminds me of Miss Willock's testimony. What you do to that nice man? How could this nice, upstanding person do that to you? Or, no, I don't want to get involved because I don't want her to say that I said to leave her husband. Or I don't want him to say that I said to leave his wife because we don't believe in divorce. Got it. All right, so I want to open that up to the panel now. What do you guys think?
One of the major issues is trust. We have a small church. It might look like a large church, but it's really a small church. And because everybody knows everybody, there's a major issue in trying to say, well, I'm going to trust Joan with something that's going on with me. But yet Joan knows Sally, and she and Sally are friends, and I saw them looking at each other the other day, and they might be talking about me. So it's like, even though that may not be the case, it's an apparent barrier because, again, once you open up to someone and someone else is aware of it that you didn't tell, it really shuts you down after that. And it's not just in the church or in that situation, but that in general. And in the church, it's like the judging and the talking about, well, the disapproval of who I'm with and whatever. So the reality of it is that it's a major problem to actually trust, but we can overcome that.
That little potluck gossip where, I mean, I don't even have to imagine it because I've been to the potlucks. I've heard people talk about other people and their business, and that makes me go, ooh, that means when I'm not there, they're going to be talking about me. Mm-hmm. And everybody going to be in my business. And so that perpetuates, you know, that feeling of, you know, I'm going to keep everybody out of my business. I'm not going to seek help. That is very, very true.
There's an issue there also. If that persists and the person does not find someone that they can actually trust, even if they don't trust them 100%, nothing happens, nothing changes, it gets worse. So they're going to have to find out, they're going to have to become brave and trust someone to start the conversation.
Got it. All right, so gossip, being in a small environment where everybody knows everybody. We talked about beliefs surrounding divorce, beliefs, judgment, fear of judgment. All of those are very, very true. And so we're going to move right. Somebody wants to add to that.
I want to add also, since we talked about seeking professional help, seeking professional help could also mean outside your church. Sometimes it might be easier to come to us than to come to someone in the church. So we get a lot of church people that come to the Women's Coalition because they want it to remain confidential and they trust us. They know we're not going to come back to church because we don't come to your church. And I don't go to your potluck, so I won't know anything about you and what's going on in your church, so they feel safer. So I want to say that if you're not comfortable, you need to get help, come to us. We will never dissuade you from your church. I mean, I'm at your church all the time. I come here every year. So I have a lot of respect for church. I am a Christian myself, but sometimes you need to come out to church because sometimes Christians could be a little cultural closed-minded. And it's either the religious way or no way. And we have to be conscious of that. And the last thing that I wanted to say about it, also, you might be trying to seek help outside, and people might discourage you. Well, don't go to the Women's Coalition because they hate men. Don't go to the Women's Coalition because the men going to be put in jail. Don't tell any member here, because if they go report it, you go into jail. All those are myths. That's not true, to get you from not seeking help. And I think, as Brother James said, if you don't reach out for help, it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse.
Right, and thank you so much for that, because you reminded me of something that I wanted to bring out: faith over therapy. Sometimes we think, faith alone, you just need to have faith, you just need to pray, and that's going to make the situation go away. Not saying that that can't, but those are the types of beliefs that are barriers to people seeking help from people who God, I believe, has put there to be his arms and his legs in helping bring a blessing to people. All right, so let's move right along. We have a little bit more to cover. Number 3, how do abusers who claim to be Christians use religion or spirituality to inflict trauma on their victims? You guys like my little picture of Jim Jones there? How do abusers who claim to be Christians use the Kool-Aid to inflict trauma on their victims? We're going to open that up to you guys in the audience. Anybody have any thoughts on that? What are some ways that Christian abusers use spirituality to inflict trauma?
Wants to say anything, I will say this. Someone had a hand up?
There's
over
somebody,
here?
okay.
Okay.
Holly Ann?
Similar to what Sister Ambrose was saying, where it's often mentioned that God hates divorce, and, we're not getting into the middle of that. A Christian abuser may come back and say, well, you can't divorce me, you can't leave, you can't go anywhere because I haven't, if we say the only grounds for divorce is infidelity, I haven't cheated on you, so you can't leave me, things like that. So it's possible to hold that over someone's head.
That's a very good one. Anything else? So holding those beliefs around divorce and making that person feel ashamed, or threatening them with the shame of having to deal with the stigma of what would happen if they left that abuser, is one way to hold that over their head. Are there any misused scriptures that you guys can think of that people use to be like, hey, I have this power over you? And it doesn't just have to be in a domestic violence relationship. You can think about it in the context of some spiritual leaders use their power, their position of authority to emotionally abuse people. What are some of those ways? All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Famous one that's always just pulled out. Ephesians 5:22 and 23. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husband. And the other one is, the husband is the head of the wife. And that is a scripture that's taken out of context, and they just throw that because they fail to realize that 21 says, submitting yourself one to another in the fear of the Lord. And then 24 says, therefore, as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. But the big one, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ so loved the church and gave himself for it. And when they take that out and said, well, you're my wife and you have to submit and all of this, they fail to realize that husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Christ sacrificed everything for the church. And that is an example that husbands must follow. And if you're submitting, both of you are submitting yourself onto God, and he's submitting himself onto God, then that makes a big, big difference, because then the submission is not oppression. It is a matter of just serving, loving, caring, the same way that Christ put the entire perspective of the church, the relationship between Christ and the church, Christ as the bridegroom, church as his bride, marriage, it's the same thing. And God likes leadership, he likes order, but under that leadership, God is the head, and everybody else is subjected to God. And once that happens, you have a home that's really in order and the way God intended it.
So, beautiful response. And that makes me want to skip straight to number 5 on gender expectations within religious communities. Does that have an impact on abuse and the way trauma is addressed? So, that was one. Women must submit to their husbands. Are there any other gender expectations that we can think of? Before I let Ms. Willock take the lead on that, does anybody else have some insight on that? Are there other gender expectations that impact the way we address trauma in the church? All right. I know we've been beating up a little bit on the men for a while. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit before we come back. Can women manipulate men? Can women be abusers too?
Yes.
Okay, in what ways can women be abusers? Even if they're not slapping people around, and I know there's some women who do that. In what ways can women manipulate men? I see Mr. Christopher has his hand up. He's ready.
This is no reflection on our marriage.
I hope
okay?
not.
Definitely not. But as a police, right? I worked with Clemmer for a long time. As a police, we went down to a house in Frederiksted where a man came and he complained his wife was beating him up. And what do you think the police did? We started laughing at him like, that's nonsense, a woman beat you up. So when we went down to the project to talk to the lady, she said, "You call police for me?" Blow! Cuff him. I was like, wow.
Now live and direct, you've
Right,
seen
so
it.
we had to arrest her because she did it in front of us. So after man out there getting licks, but they ain't saying nothing. So you men report it. Don't be afraid to report it.
Yeah. So that's physical, but I think women can be a little bit more subtle too. Okay, go ahead.
Withhold sex.
I have a strange presentation or input. I had a girlfriend once.
Okay, now.
And the reason why I got afraid of her is because every time we're having fun and she wants something, is when she noticed that I am on my way. So then she will ask me for those things before I, get well again.
Yeah.
So women could have men the way they want, when they want.
Using sex to manipulate you?
Yes.
Yes. That
Yeah.
is very true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they does that all the time.
I hope you escaped that. Congrats on surviving that relationship.
You see, I always try to observe things when I'm in a relationship or when I'm around people. I look very keenly at their behavior. And I observe that once, twice, almost all the time, I say, this is the way she tried to get over me. And I just had to, keep myself strong.
Well,
So-
you're here, so congrats. Good for you.
Amen.
All right. Did somebody else have something to say? I want to let Ms. Willock go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
It's amazing how the two examples that I thought about, in terms of the man is the head of the church, of the home, and women must be submissive. When we look at are there gender expectations within religion, religious committees that impact the way abuse and resulting traumas are addressed? The fact that the interpretation of God's word, the verses that were read in Ephesians, this person and that person will interpret the same line 2 different ways. And so sometimes, because of the interpretation that one may take, or even our religious leaders, or the individual that the person is going to for help, because of the way that they interpret it, it can cause some damage in how they deal with a victim. Okay, it can have some bias consequences and actually turn people away. When we talk about, the church and why some people don't, come to individuals in the church, that is some of it. Also, one of the things I looked at, there was an article I looked at, and it talked about the fact that religion is known as, it acts as both a protective factor and a risk factor for trauma, gender-based violence. Religious beliefs are sometimes used as asset to help in emotion, to cope with, and be supportive. But then, in some cases, and I go back to the way we interpret these verses, it helps to normalize violence, especially in the home, especially, in domestic violence. Religious practices, are sometimes the interpretation, like I said, it minimizes the roadblocks that some of us may have, and it maximizes the resources of women. So it takes 2 ways. Our church, yes, is going to be supportive. The individual we may go to may be supportive. But then when it comes to dealing with, the abuser and whatnot, sometimes women, especially, or men, are asked to or are forced to stay in a relationship that is abusive. This quote, no women should ever have to choose between safety and her religious community or traditions.
I love what you're saying, because it's like religion can be a tool. It could be a tool towards healing, or used badly, a tool that totally messes you up, like a car. A car is a tool that should get you from point A to point B, but somebody could take that same car and decide to plow into a group of people. So it's how we use the religion and the things that we're taught and those interpretations. So really love that perspective.
One piece, when we talked about men and women, and you kept saying we don't want to beat up on men, but the truth is, statistically, the majority of the perpetrators are men. But domestic violence, just so we can be clear, since that's my area of expertise, is about power and control.
Yes.
And a lot of women got power. If it ain't in the bed, it's in their pocket. So sometimes if they got the money and they controlling the house, then they can make men do whatever they want to do. So we have to be real clear that a victim could be male or female. And we could be very powerful when we're ready. So remember something about domestic violence. It's about who has the power and who has the control.
Got it.
That's any sense.
Ms. Ambrose?
Okay, and to add to that, 1 Peter 3:7 says that the wives are the weaker vessel. So when a man wants to say that he's being abused, at least physically, communities will not tend to believe him, so that impacts how the trauma is addressed. Because I've even heard pastors say, if a man hits you, hits the wife, he should go to jail. But if a woman hits the man, he deserves it. And these are things that are said jokingly, but men really are afraid to go forward because I don't feel macho. How can I tell somebody my wife is actually abusing me? So those are things that we have to look at.
To add to that, something I've observed is that people tend to get in relationships that kind of have this similar type of trauma bond. So it's like the trauma is attracted to the trauma. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying. And so in that situation, a man, he could have been physically abused in a previous relationship, maybe by a parent or whatever. And so he is accustomed now, maybe he's attracted to this dominant type of woman because that's all he's accustomed to receiving. People tend to like go back to what's familiar to them, not necessarily what's good for them. So there could be so many different factors at play. I see a hand here, but I want to quickly move on, but go ahead. You'll be the last on this one.
We tend to dwell on a lot of physical abuse. What about verbal and emotional abuse? It's even worse than physical abuse.
Talk to us now. That's very true. I thought you were going to give us a little bit more. But yes, verbal and emotional abuse are real things.
It hurts. It hurts.
Yep. And that's the psychological that Dr. Clement, you were talking about, that you may not see the bruises, but it's on the inside. All right. So we're going to move on. I want to go back a slide to number 4. I want to go back. Do abusers usually wake up one day and just decide to hurt the people they love? Or are they typically suffering from their own trauma? Do they deserve support or do they deserve accountability? I don't know if you guys saw this story about the Ugandan runner. She just competed in Paris for Kenya, I believe. I hope I got the details right. She's Ugandan, but she was living in Kenya, and I think she was representing Kenya. And she just came back from doing something incredibly wonderful for her country, probably living on that high, only to be doused with petrol and burned to death by her boyfriend over a piece of land. Her, ex-boyfriend, former boyfriend, somebody she had a relationship with, over a piece of land. Does somebody like that, do they deserve support? Do they deserve accountability? Did he just wake up one day and become a murderer? You know, what are our thoughts on that? Anybody in the audience before we bring it back to the panel? We're doing such a great job. You guys don't have any input?
No.
Okay.
I would say it depends on the circumstance.
Okay. We can hear you. It depends on the circumstance. But we need the mic, though. It came off?
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
As I was saying, it depends on the circumstance. They say that sometimes there are crimes of passion. Somebody just get to a point immediately and they do something. Other people, like that 14-year-old that planned to go into school, get his father weapon, leave the weapon in the car, go inside, talk to the teachers, and go back out, take the weapon, and then go in and kill people. To me, that's premeditated. You've planned that out, you had time to think, so he should be accountable. Other people in a discussion or argument, you get so excited, you get so passionate, you just do it unthinking. And I also believe, this is my belief now, I still believe that demons go in people and do stuff and then jump out. They go in, they do stuff with people, and then they jump out and leave them there in the circumstance. That's just my belief. So it depends on the circumstance.
And I guess my question would be, how did the demons get the opportunity to get in there? But we have a hand over here. Kamisha. We're giving you a workout, we know.
Hey, good night.
Hello.
Based on your question, I think it depends on both, I would say. People like that, if you are giving a trauma response, and I agree with what you were saying, that people kind of bond over trauma responses, they are bonding because of the trauma that they were dealt with based on growing up in the homes or dealing with relationships or whatever the case may be. And because of that bonding that they have, that's the only response that they got in terms of the connection. In terms of this runner that got burnt from her partner, I don't think that this person, I think this person needs to take accountability of the fact that he did what he did, but he also needs to take accountability of the fact that he knows, or he might not even know, that he needs help. That's where the support comes in. People who knows him, around him, might know, hey, you might be acting a little different. And sometimes people who are around you, they also need to be accountable to tell you, hey, if you're my friend or if you're my close family, hey, you're doing something that's wrong, and I think you need to be aware of what's the situation. You might need some help, whatever the case is. I can give you some outlets in terms of, hey, this is a safe space to go to talk or to do what you got to do. So I think it goes both ways. You need support and also accountability, because there's only one way that you can spin it in terms of like you taking accountability, but sometimes some people don't know what they're doing that's wrong because they're so accustomed to that space that they're in. They're so accustomed to that being around people who are in the same caliber of type of people who they are, but
It's
not
in
be able
their
to
reality.
Correct. So it's their reality. But if somebody don't actually come to them and say, hey, like you're doing something wrong, then how would they really know? That's how I feel.
Very, very cool. Yeah, and I think you're hitting on the point that this is complex, that they need both accountability and support. Because if we look at this example, from what I understand, this is a common occurrence in Kenya. Like, men just do this on the regular because it's like it's a part of the culture. So what you talk about where they probably don't even realize that this is not something that you do because that's what I saw my father do, it's what I heard my brother do, so there are a lot of factors in the background. You wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, let me just add that number one, domestic violence is not a behavior you're born with. It's a learned behavior. So you learn that in that home or wherever you grow up. That's number one. It's also intergeneration. It can go from one generation to the next, and I've worked with 4 generations of families experiencing domestic violence, whether it's the victim or whether it's the perpetrator. So what they're learning in the home is what they're interpreting. I think the whole issue of support and accountability depends on the situation. If you got a community that say it's okay to burn up the woman, and that's a culture thing, then it's going to keep happening, and no one is going to be held accountable. Perpetrators, abusers have to be held accountable, or they won't stop. We've had 60 people die in this community from domestic violence. Not all of them went to jail. They have to be held accountable. And abusers, I was one of the founders of the Men's Coalition because I realized we need a program to work with men. Yes, men and women, because we got women that's abusive too. They need to unlearn the violent behavior, but they have to be held accountable at the same time. You can't make excuses for the behavior. You can't let them go because it will continue. So it's important to do a bit of both. The education piece, if they continue to do it, then they need more than that. Some people need to be put away because they are violent and they will kill you. Some people just learned the behavior, maybe it was passionate and angry, and they need help. But you have to know the background, you have to know the history, and you have to know the situation. But in this community, we don't know all that. We just jump on sides based on who the people are, whether it's the abuser or the victim, and that can become very dangerous for our community.
Thank you for that. And when we look at situations like this, that's the most extreme level where somebody was murdered, somebody died. But I always think about, where did this start, And my heart goes out to those little boys in homes where they're seeing their dads do that to their moms. Maybe Mr. James can add to this, but, there was a video circulating where a woman got shot and there were people around. she was defending her daughter because the person who shot her eventually, his son was reacting to something he said that the daughter did. And it had people on that video who didn't even flinch when the gun went off. There was a young man that just moved like, you know, this is business as usual. What kind of husband will he be? What kind of boyfriend will he be? What kind of father will he be if he makes it to that level, if he lives that long? And I mean, I don't mean to be insensitive, but this place has like such an epidemic of just losing young men. And the ones that we do keep, when they get into building families, what do they perpetuate?
You're not being insensitive at all. One of the things that we all know is that these traumas didn't just happen. They didn't happen overnight. There are things that have been happening for some time. Those of us that are a little bit older, we grew up in an era where the trauma was being exercised in our homes, our neighborhoods. Everybody knew, nobody said anything. As we got, I guess, within the last 10, 15, 20 years, Clemma and her people have started doing things, and that's been very, very helpful. So information is out there. This discussion that we're having is trauma-informed church. We as a church need to understand that trauma is not just what you can see. It's not just the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, the sexual abuse. As children, they, as you said, they learn what they see, and then they internalize it, but they're children. So they don't have the skills to cope or to handle what's happening. And then sometimes they become parentified, where they're in control of the house or they're doing the adult work while their parents are either dealing with drugs or in and out of whatever they're doing. So in the school system, we definitely see a lot of behaviors in our students. And we attempt to, we're not reacting to it, we attempt to deal with it, but we got to be very careful. So that's why we were calling Clemma and calling some other people so that we are not doing this by ourselves. But once we identify certain things, and you've seen them too, you have seen some of these behaviors in little children. A child that would walk up and smack another child, they learned that somewhere. That's not, well, I was angry in that moment, so I decided to hit somebody. No, that child saw that somewhere, whether it's on television or whether their parents were, doing some things there. So these things, this trauma is not just what you can see. Sometimes it's internalized so much so that the person grows up holding anger for years. And yes, it may snap, but at the same time, it's not something that other people do not know.
For sure. You wanted to add to that?
Yeah, as a pediatrician, we fail to realize, and I see parents dealing with their children, and we as Caribbean people sometimes tend to go ahead and allow the verbal abuse. Parents will tell, I have seen mothers curse bad words their children. They tell them, you're so stupid, and what the, explicits is wrong with you.
Waste of space.
And a lot of times our children internalize all of that, and you'll never amount to anything, and you're so this, and you're just like your father, or you're just like this, or you're just like that. And then to break away from that, they start to try to make a name for themselves, and they get involved in things and do things that then hurt and damage people for control purposes, and also as a way of just venting. And they're angry. Our young people are angry. We have a lot of angry young people, and a lot of it stems from what's going on at home.
And then the abused becomes the abuser.
Exactly.
Another thing that I thought about is that not only that they see these behaviors in their home and whatnot, but it's glorified. It's glorified in the home, it's glorified in the society, in the neighborhood where they are. And so me as, you know, I want to be big. I want to be one of those that the next young man look up to, you know. So, and this is one of the reasons why I believe that in order for us to rehabilitate, we have to be supportive of them, even also, so that we can get to the point where we can start the rehabilitation process with them.
So, Pastor Ambrose, okay, and Ms. Adwell, Ms. Carol?
Hello. Okay, so I'm not sure if I understand Brother Rudell if he want to say it's progressive. Something in a relationship happened and this behavior got progressive. If she didn't notice that it was a progressive and dangerous situation, maybe she didn't know. But this wake up one day, I'll tell you a story that I heard in Trinidad, that this wife who lost her daughter, her 5-year-old daughter, to her boyfriend, she said he just woke up and killed the 5-year-old girl. He just woke up and did that because she explained that he was never that way. He never showed any anger. He never showed anything. I'm like, but eventually he's termed as mental. It's a mental situation. How could she not see any signs of abuse? That was beyond me.
Yeah, I'm hearing people in the background say they don't believe that that's...
There were people, why are you all accusing the girl? Because she probably didn't know. And I mean, there were a lot of mixed stories, but this is really true. Yeah. And the end part is about the support and accountability. I believe everybody needs the support and they should be accountable. But the support comes with, are they remorseful of what they're doing? Because sometimes you see they do something and they're not remorseful. They're actually laughing.
Yeah.
Is mental. Probably that's a mental thing. It's very sad.
Yeah.
And I think everybody needs to be held accountable.
Pastor Ambrose, after this. Go ahead, Mr. James.
If something happened to a child and the child does not reveal it or is not addressed, let's say it continuously happens, say 2-3 years. Let's say that child is between 5 and 8. By the time that child is 8, that child has decided what it's going to do in certain situations. And then when it happens, we act like we don't know, we don't understand, but yet somebody knew something happened some time ago. And they didn't want it, it was embarrassing or whatever it is, they didn't want to address it, okay? That child is 8 years old, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and they start becoming a bully. They're doing something. By the time that child is 10 years old, that child is doing some major damage. By the time that child is 12 years old, school is not important, parental authority is not important. The police, I hate the police, and I'm gonna do something to the police at 12 years old, right? I could tell you a story growing up of a young man that died at 12 years old. And at that point, he had been beaten by everybody in the neighborhood, including me. Yeah, because if I catch him, I could put some licks on him, and I did. Because he was disobedient to his parents. He was running from everybody, cussing out everybody. And at that time, we thought that you put licks on somebody that would change things. But all that did was harden his behind. That young man died at 12 years old.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from this conversation before we go to Pastor Ambrose is that two things can be true at the same time. That these people who are abusers now are doing some serious stuff that they need to take accountability for. But it may also be true that somewhere along the lines that person who's now a big, hard abuser was an innocent child at some point and was probably also abused or a victim of trauma. Pastor Ambrose, go ahead.
My little 2 pence would be, why are there so much suffering in the world? It's a question that needs to be answered. And we have to come to the conclusion that because sin is in the world, we have so much suffering in the world. And we kind of overlooked Brother Rowan's observation in thinking that sometimes the devil just jump into some people, and I don't know about the jump out part, but jump into some people and they do stupid things. You know what I mean? And we're going to be wrestling with this for all our lives, because good people do suffer. You know what I mean? You don't have to do anything per se to suffer. And what we are doing sometimes, we are looking at a human solution to the problem. But we need to get supernatural solution to some of these problems. And until we get that, we're going to still going around in circles, saying the same thing over and over again.
So, Pastor Ambrose, I love that, which brings me to my next question, and maybe you can open this up. Are faith and prayer alone enough to heal trauma? That's number 6. Are faith and prayer alone enough to heal people with trauma? And the second part to that question is, if you say yes or if you say no, how does Jesus' life support your answer? How does the way he treated people who needed healing support that answer? All right, so I don't know if you want to start the conversation.
I'll prefer somebody else to start the conversation.
All right. I saw a hand over here. I don't know if you want to take a shot at that or if it was for the one before. Hold on. This person in the middle? Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I just realized that you all are just, all the answers that are coming up are drawing closer to the question that I am trying to ask. I'm a retired educator, and I had a situation in my class where in 2nd grade, a student would bully the other children, a boy in fact, and he would use all indecent languages. The children would call on me and ask me, tell me, look what this child is saying and so forth. Once I couldn't handle it anymore because I keep on talking to him. I took him to the principal, and the principal started laughing. Now, when the principal started, I want to know what's going on. But this boy, what he keeps on saying, that's not bad language. My father used that every day. That's what I'm hearing every day. That's not bad language. So the principal asked me, don't you know who his father is? I said, no, I'm not too familiar. I know his mother, but I'm not too familiar with the father. That's why the teacher was laughing, because who the father is. That's how his everyday language. But what I'm saying, what I want to know, Pastor hit on that just a few minutes ago. What should we do? To me, we don't have much hold on these things. What can we do? Okay, we're going to report that to the principal, or maybe it might reach up to the Department of Ed or whatever it is. But what's being done to these young people growing up, especially our young men, with these behaviors, this attitude, and before we know it, it is so sad. I say, right now, for me to be there, and which I hear all the time, oh, this young boy that I taught, he's in jail because of this or because of that he did, and his behavior or whatever it is in the community. What do we do to help? Is it, as my sister just said, Can we just say, well, we pray for them or whatever it is? What is the community doing about that?
Hold
to
that
help?
thought. What do we do? Solutions. I hear you. We had another hand over here.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
I was more going back to the previous slide. Does the abuser need support, or should we hold the abuser accountable? I am traumatized by a 4.5-year-old. I have 3 of them in my class, and I don't think it's funny. These children are acting up. They are they are actually abusing other children. There are 24 in a class. How do the victims get help? Because when it comes to the tiny ones, it seems like nobody can do anything. Their hands are tied. But I don't think it's funny. They need to do something with the younger ones that are bullying, not even the peers, but the teachers. Friday, I had to go home early because of my health. You having to talk and talk and talk, and these children are acting up. The counselor telling you call their parents, and they telling you this, and nobody is doing anything. I had a migraine Friday, and I tell him it's either the children are out of the classroom, and you save the 20 that are there, and I stay, or I leave, and you all find somebody else. They couldn't find anyone because so much teachers are out, and they need all the paras. Well, I left and I went home. They had to find somebody else to cover my class.
Yeah.
We have to look at our well-being also.
Yeah.
And when these little ones are acting up, teaching starts at home. What is being done at home? And the parents are asking me for assistance when some of them are high in the governmental position, and they don't know what to do with their own children. They have 1. I have 24. What am I going to do?
I get it. Trust me, I was a teacher, and I don't think teachers get paid enough for everything that we go through or what you've gone through. So, I'm happy this was a space for you to be able to vent a little bit. So firstly, I'm sorry that you're going through that. And where's the support? And my question in that, too, is, how does a 5-year-old, 5-year-old in the big span of life, how does a 5-year-old get to that point where they are already exhibiting perpetrator-like behavior? Is that their fault? Because, your brain doesn't even fully form till you're 25-year-olds. Yes, they're doing something that's very traumatic, but where did that start? So we're getting closer and closer, and I'm glad that the conversation is kind of reaching ahead to climax to what are the solutions for these things. Yeah. I saw Mr. Christopher's hand, and he'll be the last on this before we get into our activities.
One of the things, and I hear you. But I believe, I did it for 20 years, and I held every parent that walking through the door responsible for their child's attitude. If that child did what they weren't supposed to, you're getting a call, and you're picking up your child, and you have to take that child to get therapy or something and come back with a letter to me so that I could accept that child back in the center. Because the thing is, your 24 kids are your responsibility. Anything happens in that class, they're going to want to go with you and everything else. So I believe, number 1 is the parents. You have to hold them accountable. And if they don't come, you call them until they come. Because some of them going to ignore your call.
I like that solution, because when you make it inconvenient for the parent, because they got to go to work and make money, but when child out of the classroom, they can't do that anymore. When it becomes inconvenient for them, then they're going to make sure that child is behaving. So we kind of digressed a little bit, but Mr. Christopher, go ahead.
I'll make this short. Basically, years ago, adults was getting children. But today, children getting children. I've always learned that you can only pass on a certain percent of what you know. So if a child is not mature and grown enough, but they get a child, they're passing on next to nothing to that child. And so that child come the way they are. One thing I did, I think it was this week in school, I was telling some of the kids in my class, listen to me. If you act bad in my class, I'm going to send you to the principal, and you will not be in my class without something written saying that your behavior has changed. The problem is, and I look at it because they need to have laws and rules that if a child is acting a certain way, and you put the parents to be blamed for those actions, then that parents will now be more committed to train the child or to discipline the child or to report the child. The parents have to be involved. I know I'm saying white law, because if I know my child cannot go and do this because you gotta go back to your mother and you cannot come back to school until things change, the child and the mother have to have a different way of doing things. But the reason is that most parents are not responsible. It's like the shooting they had up in the other day, and they arrest the father. Why? He bought the gun for the child. It's like the parents is who encourage some of the behaviors at home, and then you want to come out and act it out when you get out in school. You have to hold the parents responsible. That's my only opinion saying.
Yeah, what I see emerging from this conversation is that you have to have a healthy mix of empathy, but still have standards that are held very high, whether you're a teacher dealing with children who are acting out, or whether you're in a relationship where you're experiencing some sort of abuse and so forth. And what do I mean by that? Maybe my boyfriend, he explained to me his mom abandoned him, and that's why he's acting the way that he's acting. Maybe I feel sorry for him, and every time he cries and says he doesn't want to do this to me, I feel bad. Do I have empathy for him? Yes, but do I let him continue to hit me? Do I stay there? What are the standards that I have for myself? What is the ultimatum? Either I'm so sorry this happened to you, but if we're going to continue a relationship, you need to get help or I'm gone. If it's a teacher and a student that is acting out, I'm so sorry that you're having a bad day today, but I have these other kids that I need to look out for. So until you get this note from the principal or until you get this note from your mom saying that you guys are taking X actions, you cannot come back to my class. I know it may not always be that simple, but, having some sort of healthy mix of empathy and still having high standards, because a lot of the people that act out in these ways, they are coming from situations where they did not have any standards. They did not have those high standards. So now they have this encounter with you. They're looking for that structure. Some are craving that structure. And do you have the strength to bring that to the table? So go ahead. We have a couple questions left, so this will be the last on this particular topic.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have worked with children for 25 years, but I have been abused. The woman fight me on a job. Then I get a new job now. I got suspended for a whole month without pay. And now, this new job I get, they lock me in the building. The other two women, one woman hit me 2 elbows, the other woman jumped the cat on me. And then the other woman fight me. I don't mind nobody, I don't mind nobody's business. So I feel like I don't like bullies. I don't have to go to work or to stay home.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
I am curious as to whether or not the individuals who are given their experience, teachers, about, what they're experiencing. Are there any support from the administrators of the school? What have been done? And I'm going to go a step further, because I know sometimes we reach out to administrators or whoever, and we don't get the support. There is a chain of command. It doesn't stop there.
I tell the administrator, right, that the people is meddling with me, right? So she tell me she don't believe in what I said, she only believe in what she said. But I told her she gotta have the final report.
And documentation is something that is needed all the time. Document, document, document. So when you go to the next level, you have something to show as to what has been happening and force those individuals to take action.
So, like I said before, I'm really sorry that happened to you, and we don't have all the answers.
Right.
But as you bring that situation up and you felt so comfortable to be able to just say, hey, I'm hurting, you were able to be vulnerable with us. I want to ask, somebody comes to you with a situation like this, person to person. Is it enough to just say everything happens for a reason?
No.
Is it enough to just say, just pray about it?
No.
Why are those ineffective things to say to somebody who could be as vulnerable as this, to say, hey, I'm going through something? What are some of the bad things or the worst spiritual type of phrases that we use when we're responding to people who are saying, I am hurting, I am going through something?
That's question 7.
God is in control, okay?
That's question 7.
That's question number 7, sorry. Question number 7. God is in control, Go ahead.
We know God is in control, but just saying God in control and not doing anything about it, that's a problem.
Okay.
Because in the Bible says faith without works is dead. You can't be traumatized and just keep it and say, okay, I'm going to pray. You have to take the action. You ask, I would like to know the chain of command. Because on Monday, what I planned to do was to go to AFT and talk to them over there. The information that I just gave you, that has been happening from last year. That little 4 or 5-year-old was kept out of school for over 3 months. The principal told me, they can't leave him home. He needs to come back to school because the law is that he needs an education. The law is I need to keep my mind, I need to keep sane, because they don't want me to put my hand on children. Then they need to bring the children in and make sure there are paras or somebody there to assist you. The para went home. She said she's not feeling well because of all this she has to deal with. I was there by myself. I asked them for help. They said they don't know. But then when I left, they found somebody to put in the classroom. The parent was complaining now, oh, I came to pick up my child, and he was wild. He's not usually like that. Why was he so wild? Because you were not there. I told her, I'm homesick.
Yeah.
You talk about there are laws that says the child have to be in school and whatnot. But there's also laws that says the child has to be in an appropriate setting. And so clearly it sounds like, there is a problem with this child. And, in terms of what you're being told by administrators and whatnot, document those things. Insist that's something that has to be done. And yes, I'll talk to you about the chain of command afterwards.
I feel like I'm a counselor. Every day I have to write.
Teachers are
I am tired of writing.
I feel like we see how trauma support can sort of emerge from situations like this, because I can already see how I feel like Ms. Willock would be a perfect point person to lead a group focused on educators who are experiencing trauma from their experiences in the classroom. I feel like, are you guys connected? I feel like the two of you should get connected as well and be sort of a support group for each other. But to touch base, and again, I'm so sorry you guys are going through that, and that this can be a space for you to talk about it.
Yeah.
Just something to add. What about the Department of Human Services? This is, okay. And then their caseworkers need to continue to understand that this is not working. The child needs a little bit more, and the family needs some serious intervention.
If I may attend to the elephant in the room, Pastor Ambrose started to talk
About spiritual.
Listen, whether we want to admit it or not, sin is a reality. And since sin came into the world, everything has been affected, everything has been dying. So said God the Father, right? Okay, so when we don't address things from a spiritual perspective and it's only a human perspective, philosophy and so forth, and I'm saying that it needs to be a combination. But if we just adjust it from one or the other, we're going to be short-handed. When you talk about social services, you talk about human services, you talk about the medical field, you talk about educating. Listen, we're all connected, but yet we're all discombobulated at the same time because we're coming from different perspectives. And so one of the bad things that you would say to a child, okay, I'll pray for you.
Not just a child, anybody experiencing trauma, right?
To anyone. But why is that? Why would that be a bad thing? Because praying alone doesn't take care of the immediate. Jesus didn't say, I'm going to pray for you that you get some food. He was making sure that he got them some food. So physical things has to happen. However, just like these teachers are talking about, the fear of not being supported will make them sick mentally and then sick physically, and they will not be into work. They will not be going, and then the parents going to wonder, well, why are they, but yet the parents are not doing their part as well. So it's a complicated thing. It's not one Band-Aid fixes all.
What are some other things that we should not say to people when they're bringing real problems like what these two ladies have brought to us?
One of the major things is, man, you're exaggerating.
You're exaggerating, okay?
Can I jump in here quickly?
Are you going to answer the question on the board?
Partially.
Okay.
I think I read somewhere in the Bible where a child was acting up at home, and the elders and them, they don't know what to do. And so they went to Moses to ask Moses what to do. And Moses went to the Lord and asked the Lord what to do. And the Lord said to Moses, if you continue to talk to that child and they're not willing to hear you, you need to take him out of the camp and stone him to death. That might be radical today, but in a situation like this, you have to separate the child from the environment where it's causing the problem, not the teacher. So you got to have juvenilized home to put those children because they are not going to change. And unless there is spiritual intervention, they're going to remain the same. So you cannot keep carrying the child into the class. You have to remove the child entirely from the classroom and have a juvenilized someplace to carry them. Or else you're going to keep on having the same problem all the time, over and over again. And that's my little 2 pence with that.
Yeah, I think the situation, though, in these circumstances, whether it's abuse from a child or from a coworker, is when people don't believe you, and when you have to deal with the chain of commands ahead of you that are not helping you to take those actions, and you're faced with either losing your job or losing your mental health. So I think that's what the situation was in these particular situations. But comment heard.
So,
go ahead.
So for me, it was an experience with a young person coming to me feeling very angry and frustrated because they had maybe gone to one or two adults. I guess they felt they had relationship with, and the one individual came to them intimately and said, you know, it's not all the time you should share what personal struggles you're having. You know, the church may not be the most appropriate place to share, and so maybe you need to go to your closet and pray. And so for me, it was a little disturbing because I'm finding here's a young person trying to connect, most likely looking for a spiritual guidance. I can't say that that individual, maybe that person felt ill-equipped to help, but I think they could have said something different. So, you know, it was where she was confused because she was saying, you know, I come to the church and I'm trying to figure things out and this is my struggle, and now it's like I'm bothering people, you know? And so I think sometimes that happens because people really don't maybe know what to say. They have their own issues to deal with. But long ago when I was growing up, we would have things like general people who maybe say psychology or whatever, they would come and talk to the congregation as a whole because sometimes they just don't know what to tell someone who has come. And sometimes the church is like a last resort to somebody who's hurting to try to find some ray of hope. And if they come and the members aren't ready to say appropriate things, they can create even more harm.
Right. So with that said, when you don't know what to say, somebody brought a situation to you where you can tell they're going through something, what should you not say, especially in a spiritual context? Bringing it back to the question on the board.
So I'm listening. Good evening.
Hi, Gail.
Hey, how are you? And I am trying to observe all that I'm hearing. And so one of the things that comes to my mind when we talk about what to say that is appropriate for a person who may be suffering from trauma, the underlying factor is that people are not trained in our churches. People are not trained in our schools. We want teachers to be social workers and psychologists, and it cannot work. With the caseload that she expressed and the one lady over there who was crying, clearly she is traumatized. So we're not well informed, right? So I think what needs to happen before we could answer your question, we need to advocate for changes. We need to advocate it for teachers to be trained. We need to advocate for more counselors in the school. In that particular case, she needs a peer professional, somebody who will sit next to her and help her through the classes with this disturbed child. That parent also needs to be held accountable, right? She cannot just walk away and say, I'm sending my child to school. What are you doing at home to take care of your child so that he doesn't come to school and be a menace to society, right? So the appropriate thing to say before we could say it, we need to be trained as to what we say. How do we appropriately address a person who is going through trauma, right? I could tell you from a trauma-informed care professional in my work, in my work, the work that I do, is that you listen. And if you listen to that person, you take the appropriate steps to get that person help. But people don't know what those steps are, right? And then we find ourselves in constant, it's a revolving type of situation. It's perpetual. The person who is talking is traumatized. The one who is responding is further traumatized. And what do? We need training.
We need training. And so with that said, you know, like within the training, what would we tell people are not appropriate responses? I heard some like, you know, everything happened for a reason, or God is in control. Since we're talking about the trauma-informed church, and these are typical responses within the church, do we just throw spirituality as a blanket over it? Like, you know, you just need to pray, or what should we not be telling people before? I heard you say you need to listen. So maybe instead of saying anything at all, you just listen, you know? Is there anything else that before we move on, because the conversation is really coming to what are the practical steps we can take? Is there anything that are big no-nos when responding to people with trauma within the context of spirituality? You wanted to say something again, Gail? Hold on. Let's let him finish and then come back to you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody.
I think that we have come to a very unfortunate time in life, in society, where we have small children, 5 years up to 7 and so forth, dictating to parents what they must do and what they shouldn't do. It's a very unfortunate circumstance, and I honestly think that our government system has contributed a lot to this type of situation. Now, when I come from a whole different background, so I could give you different experiences of how to deal and what used to happen, although I know that in today's society, those rules probably don't apply anymore. But I'm going to give you a recent situation that happened in my country where I came from, in Nevis. There, in the high school, which lies in the precinct of Charlestown area, there were 1 or 2 children who had this attitude of traumatizing everybody else and so forth. You know what the government did? They went into Parliament and they passed a law and said, if you teachers cannot handle the situation that has become too big for you, send for the police down at the police stations, and we are going to give the police the authority to deal with the children that you can't deal with. You know what happened? When those children realized that the police not coming to play school and pitch marbles, everybody buckled up. Things change. I know this don't happen in this society. However, we might have been the contributors, this new society, a modern society, which I would say we are, might have been the greatest contributors to some of the most disgusting, inappropriate lifestyle that we have today. And you know why? Because we have an attitude that when we were growing up, we didn't have this or we didn't have that and we didn't have the other. And so the problem is that has happened is that the parents are competing against each other in terms of their children. Right in the background, oh, my child has this and my child has that and my child. And when the children don't seem to be able to come to par with the other child that has been so and so because of the parents' behavior, it is acted out into children. Now, I don't understand why a 5-year-old, as Pastor Ambrose said, should be sent to a juvenile correction agency for discipline and stuff like that. 5-year-old? This is way out of order. Don't they have parents? Or if the parents themselves, are the parents themselves not adequate to handle the situation?
Yeah. And I mean, it's evident that something is going on in the home for a 5-year-old to be acting out in that way. And that's the issue with these intergenerational cycles of abuse and perpetrating trauma. But
yes. But let me add here.
Can you add in
but
30
I'm
more
going to add in
seconds?
just a minute.
Okay.
Brother,
I really want to give you the chance to finish, but we have to wrap up.
Yeah, here's what we have happening.
Okay.
Children getting children that gets children.
Yes.
And the deterioration of the society continues to go down further every cycle. So that we are going to end up with a generation of vipers.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think the conversation has gotten ripe enough to the point where we realize faith and prayer by themselves are not enough. There's training, there's practical steps that we need to take for people who are dealing with real life problems. So I want to pivot the activity today to a real life activity. I would love you guys to get into groups of 10 to 15 people. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. I know you're comfortable in your seats, but we are going to create an actual trauma-based program right now in groups. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. So 30 seconds to get into groups of 10 to 15, and I'll give you the instructions in a second. Get together with people who you work well with, or if you're open to new opportunities, just get together in groups. I'm going to have Wintley. I want 5 groups. So whatever we do, however we get it done, there need to be 5 groups. 5 groups of 10 to 15 people. This is only a 15-minute activity, so don't worry, we're wrapping up after this. All right, so do I assume this is one group? This is one group over here. This is group 2 over here. Okay, group 2. I see group 3 here. So I see 4 groups. 4 groups, that's fine. We can work with that. All right, go ahead and give them their activity. And a clipboard. Do we have pencils? We have pencils? Okay. All right. All right, we have group 1, group 2, 3, group 4. While you're doing this, please get a leader quickly. Choose your leader. The leader will present at the end. Let's move quickly with passing out the papers. We could do the clipboards after, but just get the papers out. Hi, Honor. All right. Group 1, are you ready? Group 1, are you ready? That's you guys. All right. Group 2, are you ready? That's you all. Group 3, do you have a leader? Raise your hand. Group 4, do you have a leader? Raise your hand. Who was the leader for group 2? Group 1? You have a leader? Okay, great. All right, so you have 15 minutes to create a faith-based support program for one of the following groups. You can create your own group, like maybe a group of people who are facing trauma in the classroom or in education. But out of these groups that we have here, you can pick one. Church leaders charged with serving trauma victims, domestic abuse victims, sexual abuse victims, fatherless fathers, people grieving the loss of a loved one, death, miscarriage, estrangement, etc. Pick one of these groups and create a faith-based support program for them. Your program should focus on how the church can provide both spiritual and practical support. And at the end of the discussion, your group leader is going to be the one to present your program idea to the group. You will have 2 to 3 minutes to present the target group that you picked, the key features of your program, and how you will make it accessible and manageable and sustainable. There are a series of questions to guide you through this process. Some of them include how you're going to manage volunteer engagement. We know a lot of people have full-time jobs within the church, so how do you keep them engaged and help give them the support they need to keep the program running? Another question in here is, how are you going to break down barriers to participation? For example, the people who may feel ashamed and not know whether they're, and don't want people to know what they're going through? Are you going to create some sort of low stake accessibility feature, like something online or anonymous or whatever? These are all things you need to consider into your program. With that said, get ready, get set, go. 15 minutes. If it's too much, do the most important parts first. 15 minutes to do the best you can. I believe in you all. On the screen, can we move to the activity part of this? Just to have that up.
I read that. I was like,
When you're an animal.
About 5 more minutes.
song that says this: our God is awesome. He can move mountains. Keep me in the valley. Hide me from the rain. Come on, our God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken. Gives strength where I've been weak.
2 more minutes.
Forever he'll reign. Come on, say, my God is awesome. He can move mountains. Keep me in the valley. Hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken. Strength where I've been weak. Forever he'll reign. Come on, if you believe it, lift your voice and sing. Come on, if you know he's awesome, say it. Come on and lift your voice. Awesome. Come on and testify. Awesome.
1 more minute.
If you believe it, say it. Come on and say it.
Group in the middle, y'all gonna be the first to present, cause y'all look ready.
Think about it. Savior of the whole world. Giver of salvation. By his stripes, I'm healed. My God is awesome. Today I am forgiven. His grace is why I'm living. Somebody ought to praise his holy name. Come on and testify. You know he's awesome. Say it. Come on and lift your voice and say,
Alrighty, time is up. You guys look ready. That was enough time, right? Yeah, I thought so. All right, so we're gonna start with group 2 because they look ready. I saw they were the first to be seated. So go for it. You don't have to come up here, but you can if you want. Okay.
Okay, good evening again. So our group decided to do a grieving support group for those that are grieving within our church. And this is also extended to persons outside the community who needs it.
Beautiful.
The mode of modality, we'll have it in the youth center. We already volunteer ourselves for the youth center back there. And we also going to have a Zoom session where we meet once a week for prayer. And everybody could use Zoom, trust me. Right? And then in addition to that, it will be a WhatsApp prayer group or encouraging WhatsApp moment that is ongoing. Okay, so how do we marketing for, let me follow the situation. Okay, so the target group again is those people who have issues with grieving.
With grieving, okay? So you have your physical presence in the youth center, you have your virtual presence with WhatsApp and Zoom.
Right, so that's the support group. The practical group, again, we will have our people in the church asking for people who might want to join the group, and it's a voluntary thing. We ain't forcing no one to come to the group. Okay. But if there is someone in the church who wants to receive service, we also will facilitate that one-on-one as an individual visit, right? Because sometimes people take the grief in their different ways. They don't want to be in group situations. All right, our volunteers will be trained. So the person who's facilitating the group would be a trained professional. Will that be a social worker or a psychiatrist, a psychologist, somebody in the field who can deal with grief and counseling, right? And then physical accessibility, we already talked about the church back there, and WhatsApp and Zoom. Everybody could use Zoom.
And Google Meet and all these things.
And Google and all of that, all the chalala. Okay, so volunteer engagement, time commitment. Our group, again, is going to be ongoing, as needed, right? Revolving. So we're hoping to get people to facilitate. One may serve for 6 months, then we get another facilitator, so forth and so on. Types of involvement, again, it's in person, it's on Zoom, and it's all of that. Scheduling, how can we, church volunteer, manage, again, evening session? So our meeting will be in the youth center, 7 to 8, right, on Thursdays. On Zoom, it'll be 9 o'clock, because people need to sleep when Sunday come. All right. So it'll be 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Yes. And then we offer support through that, through prayer and whatever else we think the group need, right? And then what else? So it is important to set a confidentiality statement in the group so people don't take people's business all over this place. And talking about they calling Sister John to have prayer with Sister John and tell people them all business, right? We ain't doing that. So there's a confidentiality statement. And so we're building trust. We're not forcing individual. As individual come to the group and they share what they want to share, when they want to share, that's the business, right? We want to establish, and we are hoping to establish a safe space so that people can tell what they want to tell and be about their business. Gradual engagement, can you offer low commitment, anonymous option, else participation? It don't matter really. Who wants to come, come. Who don't want to come, don't want to come. But if there are people that we know who needs our service, we will find them. That's it.
Please give them a round of applause. Any feedback from the panel or anybody else on this group?
I tried.
Good job. No.
I think you all did a wonderful job, and I look forward to seeing that group started.
Absolutely, Sister Joan, you the first facilitator.
Me too. I'm excited about seeing all these groups come to fruition. All right. Which group would like to go next? All right. Group 4.
Next time we're doing this activity, we probably need to ensure that everybody have a different topic. Because we chose the same thing.
That's okay. It doesn't mean yours might look different.
Well, see, it's simple now because we're going to say what she said.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
It's easy for us. Exactly what she said, but we're going to add on some more. We're going to add on some more.
So then y'all should join forces.
Okay. Some of the things she said, just about everything she said, we said.
Okay.
We also included our grief counselor. We understand that Brother Coffee is a grief counselor. We believe that it's important to have a grief counselor go and speak to the family. We also said that a lot of people who have lost loved ones have never actually gone through a funeral or know how to deal with a funeral. Or they may be grieving to the point where they can't deal with the funeral activity. So we provide them assistance in getting the funeral arranged, whether it's a memorial or a funeral, we help them get it arranged, okay?
Beautiful.
We also said we would provide assistance to the individual, because one of the points was if it's a husband and wife, elderly, and one died, they're in a house by themselves, we may need to have some kind of person go, a family member go, or a church member go and stay with them for physical support, okay? And then we would also go and help them the needs of providing food, cleaning the home, giving assistance, physical assistance to the individual or the family, okay? Also, we said we would do coordination through other ministries in a church. In other words, men's ministry, women's ministry, singles ministry, whoever we can get involved to assist the family, we would get them involved as well.
So cross-team collaboration.
Correct. We talked about how we would get the members who are working to assist. We would look at days off, holidays. We talked about the various needs that they need, including financial support. Some of them might need financial support in getting the burial or the activity for the burial done. So we thought about either raising money within the church or even coming up with an account in the treasury where we can donate money on a regular basis to have available to help families during the time of grief and need and burial.
And when people are giving their tithes and offerings, you could tell them to specify that line item.
Exactly. Okay, we also talk about being trustworthy, ensuring that, she said confidentiality. we ensure that we are confidential in what we keep, because some people don't like the business on the road, like she said. So we want to make sure that we're transparent in what we do. We want to make sure that we're confident and we're confidential in supporting the family. Now, one of the reasons we picked this is because very recently we had numerous funerals with people passing away here in Central, and at the end of this month we have the Pilgrim family going through that. So it was an easy one for us to pick, and we decided that that's the one we wanted to work on, okay?
And that's the idea. You want to make it relevant for your specific church.
Now, Brother Noel made a very strange point to me. He said, based on what we have discussed between group 2 and 4, maybe we need to implement this type of support within our church. And I agree with him. The problem I see is that many people will say it's a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea. We should do this, we should do that. But then when you look around and you call a meeting.
So what is your plan for sustainability?
Well, first of all, me being a military person, I don't want you to volunteer unless you're committed. So if you know you're not going to come, don't come. I prefer 2 or 3 committed people than 10 or 15 say they're going to come and then they don't show up. So if you ain't committed, don't come. Okay? We also talk about punctuality. In other words, if we say the time is 7, the time is 7. Not 7:15, not 7:30. 7. We decided to come up with a prayer line or groups, chat groups, where we can get together and pray with the family and assist the family. And we even talked about Zoom, which is what the other group talked about as well, to support the family. So these are just some of the ideas that we came up with. I think, as Brother Noel was saying, if we're serious about this, I think we have a good start on creating this type of support within the church. Thank you.
Beautiful. Please give them a round of applause.
I just want to add to the group that I think that's an excellent idea. Is it not working? It's an excellent idea because we are having a lot of deaths. If you remind me, or Sister, if Anna reminds me, I can donate a book to you all to help people plan funerals, how to get started, what to do. Because one of the things we do in my agency is provide services for grief and loss. So I have some material I can share with you all that'll help your group. Remember, when people lose, everybody is there the first day or 2. But it's the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th week when they're alone. So if you start this, I'm just telling you from somebody who's been doing this a long time, that I got families following me 20 years later. If you start this, you can't give it up. Because these families going to become dependent on you and looking for you all to be there. So you got to be really serious about what you're doing. It's a wonderful thing to do for your church, but it's also heart-wrenching. And you're going to need some support, too, those of you all that's helping people that's grieving. So I think with your group working with the funerals and helping people get set up, and then the other segment with the grief support, I think those are excellent segments. Start with you, move to the 2nd phase. Y'all church going to be dynamic. Excellent. Good idea. Thank you for doing that. I don't know any other body on this island is doing anything like that. That's good. Thank you.
Kudos to you guys. All right, we have. It's okay. Leave the mic over there. We got her.
I just wanted to add that all of those things sound so beautiful, but let's remember that people who are divorced are grieving too, not only people who lose someone in death, and persons who have miscarriage, which is death, but there's not a body to bury. So let's think on it as a whole, because grieving is wide.
Yes.
So true, so true. All right. This group in the center, the group 3?
Group in the center, here we go. Okay, our specific
Your target.
program is sexual abuse victims. And we are the ABC Divine Club.
Okay, you have a name, great.
So we operate in the church, and when you come into our office, we will give you a questionnaire, which you'll fill out. We have a one-on-one rapport, so you're not in front of everybody. So you come in, you see one professional who will take the questionnaire, which will have the contact number, your contact information. It will have our contact information. We will give you a privacy statement for confidentiality, so you'll be totally comfortable the first time you walk in. We will have coaches with or without diplomas to guide you through your questionnaire, and so we understand exactly what the problem is, or caseworkers. And we also have follow-up forms. So we will need a pastor to be assigned to our group. We will use our active departments in the church. That's some of our spiritual support, which is women's ministry, men's ministry, wherever we see that we could divert the issue to. We would have a hotline service that you could call in case you have issues during the day, during the night. We will use our bulletins to let you know when we will meet. We'll have a website. We will use WGOD to just a little jingle about ABC and what you could come in and experience when you have an issue of sexual abuse. We will practical support. We will need grants, so we will look on the internet for grants. We will some of our local grants, LEPC, the Justice Department have grants. We could try to figure out how to write our programs to get those grants because they are competitive. And we will have an Adventist temporary shelter and support where we will provide shelter for those who need temporary shelter. And we will supply them with food for just a couple days. So, where we have a lot of land and stuff, we could just build 2 or 3 rooms or 4 rooms for people who want to stay temporarily. So, so accessibility for target audience, as we said, we will have can't read my own handwriting. Possible phone. Okay, let's skip that.
All right, Ms. Carol, I don't want to cut you off, but we have to wrap up pretty soon, so I want to give the other group a chance. But just a quick question. You guys were thinking about this in terms of like a long-term sort of project?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And we will use our 15-minute every Sabbath and a month to advocate our program. And we will have our newsletters to tell them where we are, how many people we helped, where they are today. And we will also inform people where we are now, what we did for the community, how many cases we had, how many people we helped, where they are now. Yeah.
That all sounds so wonderful, but I was just thinking, in terms of the accessibility, most people don't sort of say, hey, somebody in my family is raping me. How did you guys discuss ways to help people overcome that hurdle of shame, or maybe some sort of anonymous entry point?
Okay, like Anonymous, Alcoholic Anonymous, they come into the group. First time when you come into our business, we will let you be comfortable. We give you the questionnaire. We make you comfortable
But I
that
guess,
we are not.
sorry, I guess what I'm saying is because somebody may be raping me or whatever, I may not even get to that point to even want to come into your office. So how did you guys discuss in particular how the type of outreach for people, because people don't normally just broadcast this, like going into a doctor's office, oh, my arm is hurting me or whatever.
Definitely that will have to be voluntary, and that will be based on our advertising and our hotline and our website and stuff like that.
So online resources that people can access on their own leisure
Yes,
without being watched.
voluntarily.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Any feedback from the panel before we move on?
Or referrals. Probably you can talk to agencies that deal with individuals like that, and or small agencies, and have them refer when you get your plan in motion and whatnot. And another thing I thought about is that you're talking about helping these victims, and then you spoke about opening a shelter. Those two are too heavy loads, so my suggestion would be, pick one that you're going to start with, and work with, because those two are quite a bit. Okay.
I just want to add that I think it's critical, maybe you said it and I missed it, but whoever's going to be part of it, make sure that they trained and understand sexual assault, because that trauma is seriously different from everything else. And you bringing them in your office and the wrong person interviewing them could do more damage. So I would suggest y'all first need to get some training and understand what sexual assault is and what it entails and the whole parameters. And then all other stuff you said would be excellent, but it's a huge task. Individuals, support groups, shelters, it's a lot. But if you even just start off educating yourself and opening the doors and supporting the people here, that's the beginning. And y'all can do that because it sounds like y'all ready, but make sure you get the training. It's important.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so what I didn't get a chance to reach is online. You can find courses that you can take. You don't have to be certified or anything. This is in order for you to get certified. So you will go through the programs, and by going through the programs, you go to levels, and you go to the levels where after you've done the program, you get another certification and another certification and another certification. So those programs are online, it's free, and you just have to follow those training to get that training. So if you don't come in with the training, you could get the training. And we have a supervisor who is trained.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you would train your staff who would be helping and your volunteers. Okay, so even though you planned out some pretty lofty ideals for your vision, I don't want you guys to take away that we think that these things are impossible. We don't. They're very possible, but maybe start with like short-term goals and then build and build to your long-term goals. Something I would say also is important is background checks for the volunteers, because you don't want people who are actually abusers and that now they have easy access to people who are already abusing. People who have been abused, they're easy prey. So now they have like this pool here to access more prey, so we wouldn't want something like that to happen. All right. Thank you for that, Carol and team. Group 4.
All right, for the sake of brevity, we'll try to speed through. We chose domestic violence abuse victims as our target group, and we would like to target their specific needs of support, whether spiritual, financial, physical, etc. Their need for recognition in their plight, also confidentiality, and some sort of access to maybe a system to provide shelter for them if that's something that they need to get out of their situation. We looked at the program and the structure and types of resources for sure. As mentioned, we would like to have trained professionals as just making up our group of volunteers. So we're looking for persons who may do this sort of work during their everyday life and who possibly want to also donate their time. Maybe local professionals, retirees, people who have been exposed to this program and have understood it and work with the community already, as well as local church members who may want to be trained, but yes, for sure, they need to be certified, they need to receive some sort of training so that we make sure that we're not furthering any damage. We do research into the ways that we can access support for our local victims, because every community is different. So we do research on our community and figure out what's helpful, what may not be helpful here. We also want to become familiar with the local laws pertaining to domestic violence, figure out what's really going on and how we can help within our community. We make it accessible for our target audience by also keeping their confidentiality by giving them access to an app. The app may have numbers or websites for national Christian counselors outside of our small community, because sometimes it's hard to tell someone, and you don't know if this person is related to the abuser. It's a small, very, very small community. So national Christian counseling, access to that. We will have a website, an anonymous hotline, hopefully a call center that can be open at all times, rotating shifts. So hopefully we will also be able to help around the clock. We would like to establish maybe some sort of signal or put up a little poster within bathrooms or in the schools, in the church, maybe with a code word or a sticker that someone who may be abused can reach out to someone, drop a little note, something that somebody would recognize. Someone brought up people who are being abused are often not let out of the sight of their abuser. So they may not be able to come up to you and say, this is what's happening, but if they can make a signal to you, shoot some sort of sign, that might be their way out.
Beautiful.
All right, then we have for volunteer engagement. We spoke about making sure that our volunteers don't get burnt out. It's a lot of work, it's a lot mentally to have to hear all of this, to deal with all of this, so trying to rotate shifts. We would like to assign volunteers to specific groups or to specific roles. So even if you're a part of this, you don't have to always be hearing this. Maybe this month you're on prayer duty. So you're a part of the program, but you're just praying this month. Or you may be just doing legwork this month, different things like that. Yes, shifts. And in order to ensure confidentiality, we as volunteers would sign NDAs, something like that, something that allows the victim to feel like this person is ensuring my safety, this person really cares about me and this person would not be repeating anything. And then overcoming participation barriers. It was mentioned a few times, people are not just gonna come out and say, I'm being abused, So if people are unable to meet in person or unwilling, we have the online portals, we have phone calls, video chats, and we don't want them to feel like, hey, if I can't meet at this particular time, I've missed it, So going back to the hotline, the call center, those sorts of things. We also want to have past participants giving testimonials, helping out with some of the ads that we want to run. We have TV, radio, QR codes, just marketing in general. We live in a very digital age, so we want to use that to our advantage.
And sustainability?
Sustainability, in order to continue to make this sustainable, we would like to apply for grants. We did tap back into speaking about local professionals. So because we know there's a wealth of professional knowledge around, we want to continue to tap into that. So as locals are continuing to be trained. We want to see, hey, what have you all been seeing in the local community that we may not have been able to see in our research, and forever keep that, the access current. We want to make sure that we're always able to be on top of the programs. We want to tap into local grants. We want to get donations. Someone also mentioned possibly starting a GoFundMe, anonymous donations, things like that. Also, we have other congregations, non-Seventh-day Adventists. Like, this is a community-wide program. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be Seventh-day Adventists, but we can advertise all over. And we want to integrate it faith-wise. Someone mentioned the verse, the text that tells us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And we want to love our neighbors as we would also like to be loved. And we also want them to know that they deserve that love, all those types of things. So we want to integrate it. We also would like to see if we can have pastors who are also, they're already trained as counselors, but maybe specifically trained as domestic violence counselors, so that they'd be able to help instead of, blanketing and saying, just counseling, things like that.
Beautiful.
So that's what our program looks like.
Thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause? The things that stood out for me was the use of technology. Somebody mentioned this is the millennial group, and that was noted. Also, the online access to resources, and I think this group was hinting to that too, because especially for the sexual abuse and the domestic abuse, people don't typically advertise that, and just the very act of walking into an office and knowing that people may see them could be a barrier. So having the resources there online where at their own leisure they can click it, read, webinars, blogs, whatever, that sounds like such a great idea. I did hear somebody mention that background checks for that group would be important too for the volunteers, just to make sure we're not perpetuating any sort of abuse.
Making sure none of your trainers have restraining orders against them.
Yeah, stuff.
Look into all of that.
Yep.
And also a focus on young people. We have a high rate of teen dating violence in this community, and teenagers are not getting a lot of help. We're in process trying to work on the teen restraining order. So if you don't mind, include some space for young people in your domestic violence program.
And
we need it bad.
Yep. And I loved the safe code ideas. That seemed practical and a way to help with the accessibility as well. So I want to thank you guys so much for participating. I would love for you all to turn in these papers so that we could give them to the women's ministries or the family life directors and pull some ideas to make some of these come into fruition, pick the best ideas from each. So we're gonna have I'm gonna ask somebody to collect them, if that's okay with you. If you guys wanted to take pictures of what you wrote, if you feel like you want to keep it near and dear to your chest, it's okay. But if you would like to turn in and help us to turn some of these ideas into practical programs, that would be lovely. So thank you. And go ahead, Anna, you were gonna say something?
So church, we would like to thank Sister Ambrose Felix, Clemma, Doc, Joan, and Elder for their participation in giving their time twice for the month. We're looking forward to our next one in October. We will promote and move and show and tell. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you. It was an honor to participate. I'm sorry, I know we're wrapping up, but I want to mention that there are domestic violence resources in the back. There are pamphlets that Dr. Klima brought. And also 2 other programs that I think could be very beneficial: support for Christian educators who are going through some of the things they mentioned. So that would be lovely to see something like that happen. And very briefly, something I put on my paper that I think would be a really great idea is for fathers estranged from their children. There are a lot of fathers who, because they're not in good relationships with the moms, and the moms typically tend to have all the power, and they move away to other places or whatever, and they don't have any access to their children. Sometimes it could be because of things that they did, and sometimes it could just be because the mom wants to move on. And so I've seen a lot of that, and I think that would be a really good program to include. But I won't go into detail. But I just wanted to go to a text here on the screen, the final text. And it says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way we fulfill the law of Christ. It should be the last slide. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ, and that is what we are trying to do here. So thank you guys so much for your participation. Would love to see this come to fruition again, and that's the end for us. Thanks for your patience, Anna.
Okay, we're just asking you to stand as we wrap up in prayer. And I'd just like to thank Sister Anna on behalf of the Women's Ministry from the North Caribbean Conference. Thank you so much for your hard work. And I know you're doing this on behalf of Family Ministry, so I also thank you on behalf of Pastor Glendon Cross. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your love. We thank you for your compassion, and we thank you that you love us more than we love ourselves. We pray in a special way that we'll remember to treat others the way we want to be treated. We thank you for the panelists today and for the expertise, for all that they've shared. We thank you for the congregation, for the ideas that they've brought forward, and we pray that we will remember that we need to put into action what we have spoken. And so we give you the praise, we give you the glory, and we thank you for the power to do so is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.